Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Brett and Matt Show. As always, he's Brett, I'm Matt, and we are doing our Super Bowl 50 preview and who we think will be the winner. So with that said, we'll kind of get started here. So Brett, we have the Denver Broncos against the Carolina Panthers. What are your opening thoughts?
Opening thoughts are, but they're both the number one seed, right? Which I guess is kind of nice. I mean, it makes sense that they made it this far. Carolina obviously proved all season to be like the best team in the NFC, going 15-1 with their only loss somehow to Atlanta. I have no idea how that happened, by the way, but that's okay. They just moved past that and then just kind of blew through everybody else the rest of the way.
Matty Ice.
Matty Ice is trash.
He's the only quarterback to beat the Panthers.
It's garbage. I think Julio Jones probably beat the Panthers.
What?
But, and then, as far as Denver goes, I mean, it's sort of not surprising, but it sort of is, because this is one of those seasons where, most of the time you think you need elite quarterback play, which obviously, teams like, for the most part, Arizona got, Carolina got, New England was getting, those are the teams, and in Pitt, those would be the teams that you would expect. But Denver didn't have that elite quarterback play, but their defense was so damn good that they were able to just carry them through the whole season, as long as they were getting semi-adequate play out of the quarterback position, which is weird to say with a Peyton Manning-led team. But they got that when they needed it, and the playoffs didn't have as many of those mistakes that we saw a little bit in the during the regular season from Peyton, especially that 5-pick game against Kansas City early. So it makes sense that both of these teams are here. Definitely went about it different ways, but it should be a fun, exciting game. I hope. Hopefully, it's not like that last time Denver was in the Super Bowl.
Right. So everyone's worried. Last time when Denver was in the Super Bowl, they got throttled by Seattle. We don't really think that's going to be something like that this time, do we?
Anyone that I've legitimately talked to, or even asked them this question, like who's going to win this game, I don't think I've talked to one person who has picked Denver to win, other than someone who has, and he's not even confident in it. So. Maybe buying you lunch. Who's at Jeremy's buying you lunch?
Jeremy will probably be buying me lunch. This is correct.
It just seems that the makeup almost of Carolina's team is almost too similar, I guess, to the sort of team that Seattle had that gave Denver so many problems. Now, obviously, it's a different coach, some different players, and a better defense this time in Denver than it was last time. But still, it just all seems too similar.
It sure does feel that way. So you have one of the better. What is it? It's like the number one rush offense against the number one defense. It's weird, like that something like that seems to happen almost every year. But it shows itself again. So I guess if you're looking at it from Denver, I do think Denver's kind of flying a little bit under the radar. Carolina's gotten a lot of attention these last 2 weeks, as rightfully they probably should. But, it does make me a little nervous that everyone is kind of doubting Denver. And I don't know. If I'm looking at it from Denver's point of view, we're expected to lose. Everyone's expecting Carolina to win. People think that we can't stop Cam Newton. I think that defense is going to be fired up. I will definitely say that much.
Oh, I agree. And it's going to be a little bit different. I guess Seattle was a team that Carolina took care of fairly early and easily, at least in the first half of that game. Denver's defense is rated it was rated, I think, in front of it in some aspects and behind Seattle in others. But either way, fairly similar, like the edge defenders, between Averill and Bennett, and then obviously Ware and Von Miller, similar-ish, I guess. But they do play different sort of style in coverage, whereas Seattle does a lot of zone cover 3 for the most part. They mix in some other things. They're not strict zone cover 3, but Denver plays actually a lot more man coverage with only one safety over the top. So even though they have like similarly great defenses, they do play a little bit different styles. And I think that'll be an interesting sort of matchup, especially facing a runner like Cam, where if you're playing a lot of man and Cam does escape the pocket, well, you got your corners all have their back turned, running receivers down the field. And now you're not really going to have guys that come up and make a play until Cam gets a much bigger gain than you normally would.
Yeah, I mean, that's the risk you play when you do man coverage unless you have a spy. And even then, I mean, spies don't always work. Seeing certain players run through the Packers defense, I'll tell you right now, that spies do not always work. Although I will say I think Kaepernick's probably faster than Cam Newton, just my humble opinion. But it's a tough assignment for any defense. So with that said, I mean, let's kind of jump into our keys to victory for each team, and I guess we'll try and name 3, and we'll start with let's start with the Denver Broncos. If they want to win, give me one of their 3 keys for you.
For me, I'm going to say it's going to have to be like a control the ball sort of offense. Get the run game going, which I know is going to be hard because Carolina had the 4th best rush defense in the league. But you're going to have to establish the run. That's always been like a key, especially with like a Gary Kubiak offense. And I guess you can sort of say that includes things like completing the short passes, which have become almost an extension of the run game. But it's helpful because it gets the ball out of Peyton's hands really fast. And given how much of a statue he is, similar-ish, I guess, to Carson, and we all saw how much Carson Palmer was under pressure. And I think if you go by PFS rankings, not that that's the end-all be-all, of course, but I think Denver's offensive line was actually rated behind Arizona's. So they definitely are going to have to try to keep that running game going and make sure that they don't actually have to rely on Peyton dropping back a lot like Arizona ended up having to do.
That's a good point. I actually really like that key. I think I'll try and go with a different key. And you'll probably agree with it too. But I would say you look at the 2 playoff games that Denver's played so far. The guy who's busy throwing ducks hasn't turned the ball over. And I tell you what, if Peyton Manning doesn't throw an interception, I actually think Denver does have a real shot to win and pull the upset off. I mean, you look at the first game, the Steelers are the ones who turns the ball over and they end up losing. And then you look against the Patriots, Brady is the one who ends up throwing the interceptions. So I do think that's something that's going to be a key is Peyton Manning or really anyone on the Denver offense can't turn the ball over to Carolina and give them a short field to work with. Just can't have it.
That is obviously a really good one as well. I think my other key here is going to be, maybe it sounds weird, and tell me if I'm crazy, as far as like keys for Denver's defense. I'm going to say it's probably more important to stop Carolina's run game first, which obviously then means that you're forcing the ball into the MVP's hands, as a passer. But I think for Denver, obviously, again, #1 defense in yards, best pass defense, though. So the key is pass rush, and I think the secondary as well. And Cam's developed enough as a passer that you can't just play like contain on him and hope he makes like a stupid decision in a poor throw. Like you actually, the best way to get to him, I think, and to make him make a mistake is to actually get pressure. So you can't play contain. You got to let your outside guys, especially Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, get pressure and force Cam into a mistake that way, which you only can really do consistently if you know that they're not really concerned, or they are concerned that the run game is stalled.
Sure. I guess my second point would be, I think a lot of this game, I mean, this kind of gets said and kind of gets lost in that, Cam's such a good player and Denver does have some really good receivers. But I think a lot of it's going to fall down on offensive line play for Denver. They need to be able to establish the run, as you said earlier, and protect Manning. But then you just hit on those defensive guys, like they got to play and be able to put pressure on Cam without without rushing up the field so much and allowing him running lanes, right? So like when they were playing Brady, they could just rush up the field because what is Brady really gonna run? Like, okay, maybe he chooses to run once, you live with that. But 90% of the time he's not gonna do that, and you just know you can do that. With Cam, one, you're not gonna be able to do that. And two, that Panthers offense, it's kind of they run the triple option offense. So you have all sorts of misdirection going on, and if you get people busy, rushing up the field, there's going to be wide open holes, and it's just not going to end well. So if you're Denver, you need to apply pressure, but kind of like you said, do it in a contained way.
It is going to be interesting, when they do run either some of the options or even something as simple, it's not even that simple, but it's very effective, the quarterback sweep, right? Just snap it to Cam, and he just runs off tackle, and there's like a pulling guard, and there's like a tight end or a fullback out there like leading the way for him, which is different than any other offense, in the league. Most of the time you hand it off in that situation, and that takes, effectively one of the blockers out of the way. But when you run it with the quarterback, now you can have like the full 11 men on offense engaged. So Denver's defense really does have to be disciplined when it comes to all this sort of misdirection and everything else that Carolina's going to throw their way. I think another key too is obviously Josh Norman is really good, and the safety play has been pretty good for Carolina. But they have the other corner spot, right? Robert McClain was a guy that halfway through the season wasn't even on a team. He, I think, was cut by Carolina, oddly enough. Like prior to that, I think if you're Denver, you got to try to take control of that matchup because you have two really good receivers, and obviously Josh can't cover both at the same time. So whoever has got that matchup with Robert McClain is going to have to win that, especially in big situations when you need a play to be made.
That's a good point. I guess one final point I have for Denver, this is the one thing that does worry me a little bit because I'm not even gonna say, but everyone is picking Denver to lose. Okay, when everyone slants one way like that, doesn't always happen like that. In fact, more often than not with football, it doesn't. It just doesn't end up happening like that when everyone is on the bandwagon for one team. So that's my last point. It's just I don't know. I'm not liking that pretty much 98% of people are, besides Denver fans, are picking the Panthers.
It does get concerning, but maybe that's just the smart money.
Maybe who really, okay, in all honesty, who really picked Denver to beat New England? Really? Like, I would bet that 90% of people picked New England to win that game.
Unless they hated Tom Brady because they're sick of people being successful.
Unless they hated Tom Brady. That's a good point. So from Carolina's side, I guess I can start with Carolina. Carolina, I mean, we watched, the kind of pass rush that Carolina can generate with their front four, and they really allow Luke Kuechly to do what he does best and just read a defense and react. But I'm telling you right now, if Carolina can generate good pass rush, especially up the middle, like with Short and other guys, and Star Latulele, they're going to give Peyton Manning some real problems. Like they're going to give it's going to be tough on Denver if they can't lock those guys up. So one of my keys is I got to say the defensive line play for Carolina, I think, could really decide the outcome of the game.
That's a good point. And like you mentioned too, Luke Kuechly, right? Like my thing is for a key is Luke Kuechly just having a Luke Kuechly type game. He's the best coverage linebacker in the league. And Peyton actually this year struggled over the middle of the field as well. He's actually thrown 10 picks while throwing passes over the middle. So that's going to be a pretty dangerous area of the field for him to attack. But if he does, there's Luke Kuechly. And I love Owen Daniels, obviously, but I'm thinking he'll be able to keep up with Owen pretty easily. Or most of the other guys coming out of the backfield that Peyton might be throwing to, in the bottom half of like the field over the middle. So as long as Luke Kuechly.
You bring up a good point. You brought up Owen Daniels. He burned Jamie Collins, who's one of the more athletic linebackers in the league, for a touchdown. And the difference is, I don't think Luke Kuechly probably gets baited as bad as Jamie Collins does on that play. So he's gonna float it. It's gonna get picked off.
Yeah, Jamie's obviously a really good athletic linebacker, but I mean he's not terrible in coverage. But on that particular play, actually, was that both plays he got burned on?
It was for sure the one over the middle. It was bad.
I don't know if it was a wheel route or what Owen Daniels ran on that second touchdown where it was down the right sideline, but yeah, he was really open on both. So yeah, that definitely isn't going to happen against Luke. Luke is a much better coverage guy, and they won't be able to take advantage of what may have been seen as kind of like an advantage. Because Owen Daniels, despite him being kind of old and not as fast as he used to be, he's still a really good tight end.
And he loves the Kubiak offense. Like, look at everywhere Kubiak goes. Oh, there goes Owen Daniels. Huh.
Yeah, they've been inseparable. They've been together for a long time.
They have. Another, I think, key, and this is probably more just a matchup to watch, I think. But nonetheless, I think it almost, I don't know how it works in someone's favor, but so Denver has obviously two, of the top corners in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Aqib Talib matches up against Greg Olsen at some point in the game. Like, Greg Olsen is by far the best target I think the Panthers have on offense. And, like, just watching some of those highlights, I mean, he makes some great catches. The Bears and Mike Martz, I don't know what they were thinking of getting rid of him, but he's a great tight end, and I don't know, I just think it's something to watch. When I look back though at what the Patriots, when they played, I don't think Gronk was matched up a ton against their elite corners, but I don't have like the actual numbers on that, but I think it is I think it's a matchup that the Panthers need to win to have success. I think Greg Olsen needs to open up the middle of the field. It allows those underneath routes by Ted Ginn and Brown to be able to catch the ball and run after the catch kind of thing. But I think Greg Olsen's a pretty important key to the offense for the Panthers.
That is a good point, and that's interesting too to see how Denver plans to guard him, because you mentioned the two corners are really good, but they also have, their third corner, and Bradley Roby's actually played pretty well this year. So if they feel like, hey, if at some point, Olsen's made a couple big plays where they're like, okay, hey, Talib, we'll just play, nickel package a lot, bring Roby in, and he can cover Corey Philly Brown, on the outside, or Devin Funchess, or whoever the number 2 guy is, and then let Talib slide in. That could be a pretty interesting matchup. And it's also good, too, by the way, for Denver and for Carolina that they have that extra week off between the games, because I know Jared Allen got hurt, and he's apparently been practicing, so he should maybe be able to play for this game. And then both safeties for Denver.
He's going to play with a broken arm and 20 screws in his arm.
Yeah, apparently he had a full practice, which is crazy. Like
he wants to play, man. I mean, the guy's been through how many ACL injuries? He's a captain. He's a leader of that team. Dude, he's got to be one tough SOB. I mean, he wants to play.
Yep. And then let's see, another key that I got for Carolina, just continue on that path there, is I guess you have an offense that can attack teams in so many different ways, because you're perhaps the best rushing team in the league overall. I mean, Jonathan Stewart's been really good. Obviously, Cam brings that dynamic ability that he has. But you also have guys like Ted Ginn and Corey Philly Brown who can run and get deep. So, like, as a defense for Denver, like, you're worried about all these different things. If you're Carolina, just keep running the different sort of sets and everything that you have. Just run the offense. Don't try to get too cute, but just run what you do. And then once you find, like, wherever Denver seems to be weakest, you should have a matchup ability, I think, to take advantage of whatever weakness you do find, which for most of the season hasn't been much of anything, since they're number 1 in yards and pass defense and rush defense. But, you're going to have to find something to score points. And I think Carolina's defense overall is constructed in a way that they're able to do that to most teams.
Yeah, I I agree with that as well. I guess, I guess my final point for Carolina. I gotta think about this. Trying to think of something that we haven't said. You know what? I actually think I don't know, man. We've Yeah, I'm running out of I don't know, man. I want to say special teams, maybe.
Right, we haven't mentioned that at all.
Haven't mentioned. Does Ted Ginn do their returns, or is it Stevie Brown?
That is a good question.
Both are probably pretty good return man, especially Ginn. So maybe that. I know Denver had a good return man, but I think he got
hurt. Ted Ginn does punt returns.
Okay, so
Joe Webb, former quarterback, is back there at kick return for Carolina.
Wow. So maybe special teams has an impact, and actually that's worth mentioning because if either side has a big special teams play, we've seen it where that can really swing momentum one way or another. So it might be something to watch out for. I know, think about it, the last time Denver was in the Super Bowl, I think it was 28-0, or it was bad, whatever the score was going to halftime, right? And Denver kicks it off, and Percy Harvin returns that kickoff for a touchdown, and right then it's just like any sort of theory you had about how Denver could come back pretty much snapped right there. You're just like, well, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. I think if we're going to stick, by the way, with special teams, come on, Matt. You got to mention he's not the worst player in the game by ESPN's rankings. And was he actually 66 out of 106?
Something like that.
I don't even know. But Brad Nortman's actually a pretty good punter, and if you can pin, that the Denver offense back if you have to, that field position battle is always going to be has a key impact on the game, because if you have to drive consistently long lengths of the field against two really good defenses, although the talk is mostly about Denver's defense here, but Carolina's defense is no slouch either. They were 6th total in defense, 11th versus the pass, and 4th versus the rush, and they were 6th in points. So that defense is really good as well. So really, either team, whoever wins, I think the field position battle is at least going to have that leg up to start. And Brad Norton is one of those guys that I think can play a key impact on that. Mostly we're saying that because, of course, go Wisconsin and stuff. But he's also pretty good.
That's that's a great point. So with that said, I guess we could name some impact players. So I think what we should do for this is we'll name for each team. We'll name an impact player on offense, defense, and maybe someone who's lesser known that we think might have an impact. We'll try that. So I guess we can start with Denver. Whoopsies. I'll start first. I make sure I have the right headphone in because this other stupid headphone's broken, which is why I'm using these. So I guess I'll start first. You know what? You could say, Von Miller. That'd be a legit defensive player for Denver to say is going to have impact. You know who I want to see has a major impact, or if they have a major impact, is DeMarcus Ware. The guy has never been to this level. He completely balled out last game against the Patriots, and if Denver's going to pull the upset and win the Super Bowl, he's going to have a hell of a game. I think he's going to have a major impact for them to have a chance.
Well, that is interesting because I was going to go with Von Miller. So there's that. So either one of them is going to have to take advantage.
Or both.
Or both. And the reason I'm going to go with Von Miller is simply because he lines up over the right tackle, who's not a terrible pass blocker, but he's the weakest pass blocker on that offensive line. Michael Orr's actually been pretty decent at passing, horrible against the run. but pretty good against, you know, in the past. So Von Miller's going to have to do it, you know, in the pass rushing game to get to Cam. Whereas I think more or less like DeMarcus Ware is going to be able to take advantage of Michael Orr and his bad run blocking to kind of set that up. So it's actually pretty nice to have both of those guys lined up on different sides because each one is going to be able to take advantage of the weaknesses depending on the play called for Carolina's offensive line.
Yeah. So sticking with Denver, on offense, you know what? I love this guy when he was in Pittsburgh, and I still like him. He's one of my favorite players, but
Sanders.
I think Emmanuel Sanders, the catch he had against New England was awesome. Like, clearly should have been a pick and ended up stealing from. It kind of reminded me of what happened to me, you know, in playing Madden on a regular basis. When something should be an interception, it's not. But no, but in all seriousness, I really like Emmanuel Sanders, maybe because he's skinny like I am, but you know, I think he has the chance to be an impact player. And but you mentioned it earlier how Josh Norman can't cover both Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. So someone's going to get a good matchup. I think Sanders has an opportunity. And you know what? I tell you what, if I said it before, if Denver's going to win, you know, he's got to be a big reason why I think they can.
That is a good call. I like, man, who else has to have an impact? Evan Mathis.
Ooh,
left guard.
Dude, good call.
Because he's the one that's usually going to be lined up by, you know, K'Waun Short. Still does pretty good as a run blocker, but struggled in pass pro. And, well, K'Waun Short is a pretty damn good pass rusher. You know, so he's going to have one of his better games. Because as we've mentioned before, you know, you're going to have to keep Peyton standing up because he's not going to – doesn't really have the ability to escape a whole lot. I know, again, he mentioned, you know, he ran for like that 12-yard first down against New England, but that's a pretty rare occurrence. So Evan Mathis is definitely going to have to hold up his end of the bargain there for the Denver offense.
That's fair. And a little lesser-known player that we think is going to have an impact for Denver, going with Owen Daniels, baby. Just, I mean, not everyone knows who he is, and you know, in that offense, he's kind of the safety blanket. You know, if he has a good game, you know, you just don't know. But I mean, he showed up against the Patriots, had 2 touchdowns, which I wonder when the last time he had 2 touchdowns in a game, let alone a playoff game.
It's probably been a while.
Just someone a little lesser known. I mean, obviously we know him because he's from Wisconsin, but you know, someone a little lesser known, I'd say nationally. And he might have a pretty decent impact on the game.
I like the pick just because obviously a big fan. I'm gonna go with guys on the defense. I mean, we both mentioned the outside linebackers. If we're going with someone a little underrated, I kind of want to mention the run game, but I think we all know Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson. So I'm actually gonna go with the inside linebackers. It depends. I don't really know who's going to be primarily responsible for covering Greg Olsen. But a guy like, you know, Danny Trevathan or Brandon Marshall are going to have to do a really good job there. Or like we mentioned before, it could force Denver into doing that thing where Aqib Talib really has to guard the tight end. And then you have to shift Bradley Roby to the outside.
Makes sense. So with that said, we'll go to our impact players for Carolina and call them right now. We don't get to pick Cam Newton or Luke Kuechly. That's kind of a cop-out, right? I mean, they're talking about probably the MVP and the defensive MVP of the year, possibly. So those guys don't get counted. So we got to pick other guys. So let's see. My offensive player, you talked about how you know, Carolina's going to, you know, want to establish the run. Dude, Jonathan Stewart, I think he's going to have to have a solid game. And, you know, you look at what he did against Seattle especially. But I think Jonathan Stewart, if he has a good game, it's going to just help fuel their overall offense and give them a better opportunity to put up points.
That is a good call. For me, impact player, I mean, obviously there's Cam, but I'm gonna go with. You went with John Stewart, right?
J. Stu Beef.
I'm gonna say it's Teddy Ginn.
Nice.
You know, and the big reason why is because he opens up that offense a lot with his downfield. I mean, that's a scary dude. Yeah, he had a lot of drops, earlier in the season. You still got to, account for that deep threat and that deep ball, which can open up some other things underneath for the rest of the guys. If you have safeties trying to shade that way or anything like that. So I'm going to say Teddy Ginn, not only for his deep passing, but also because he runs some of those reverses occasionally, as well as his punt return ability.
That's fair. On defense, I mean, obviously I said, we don't get to say Luke Kuechly. So I'm going to go with a different guy. Could go with Kewan Short, who was a really good player, but I'm actually going to go with a guy who people forget had a really, really good season and was an impact guy a couple of years ago more so than now. But defensive end Charles Johnson, I think he's going to have an impact, hopefully rushing the passer and stopping the run against the Broncos. But a guy who's still a really good player and no doubt is going to be, a big reason why the linebackers can be free and do what they do.
That's a very good call as well. And it doesn't hurt, that he's going up against an offensive line that struggles too. So he could definitely have a really nice game here. For me, I'm going to go with a guy like, I should probably save him from my third guy. Shit.
No, don't say
it. It doesn't matter.
Don't say who I'm going to say. Don't say what I was going to say.
I'm going to say Kurt Coleman.
Kurt Coleman?
I'm going to say Kurt Coleman. And the reason being is because we've mentioned before that Robert McClain is going to have to go up against either Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas. And I think Kurt Coleman is one of those guys that they could use to help kind of shade over the top and help give him some extra coverage if he needs it. He had a couple of picks, I think. That was him that had the deep picks against Arizona. If he can have the same sort of coverage abilities in this game, that's going to help them out a lot, trying to help cover two receivers that they don't have the corners to stick with.
That's fair. And for my impact player who is lesser known, I'm staying with the defensive side of the ball, and I'm actually going to go with a rookie, a guy who, people, I don't know if me and Brett were so much head scratching. We were probably a little bit because they were pretty deep. But Shaq Thompson, you know what? He's fast, athletic, kind of a little bit underrated. But I think if he has a good game, it's only going to help the other linebackers and should only help that Carolina defense. But I think if he has a star performance, watch out.
It's sad that he starts because there's another guy, not from the University of Wisconsin. He's from Wisconsin. I think he went to Iowa State. AJ Klein, who was the starter at one point, and now Shaq starts over him. Oh well. And my impact player is going to be right tackle Mike Reimers, however you say his last name. It does not matter to me, but he's the guy that's responsible for blocking Von Miller on most of these plays because, frankly, Greg Olsen has not been great in pass pro. Neither is Ed Dixon. So it's going to come down basically to the right tackle trying to get the piece of Von Miller. And if he has a good game, that's probably the weakest spot on that line as far as pass pro goes. So that'll help keep Cam standing upright where he's more comfortable, and he'll have a big game.
That's fair. So with our impact players named, I think it's time for the big moment. So Brett, in Super Bowl 50, who are you picking to win? In fact, you know what? Give me a score, and I want your Super Bowl MVP.
I'm going to go with Carolina. And I'm going to pick a weird score. Sort of weird score. I'm going to say something stupid like 23-19.
Nice.
It's 4 field goals and a touchdown for Denver. And then 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals for Carolina.
All right. I am going to go Carolina 27, and Denver. I'm going to go Denver 13. 27-13. And your MVP of
Luke
Super Bowl
Kuechly.
50, Luke Kuechly with a pick six. Because if you have a pick six in a Super Bowl, that's awful hard not to win MVP.
And Luke is who I was going to pick as well to be Super Bowl. It's going to be Luke or Cam if
it's going to be Luke or Cam.
Like, there's almost no way that they – unless Ted Ginn has, like, a punt return and, like, a long pass play. Because who the hell was that for Baltimore that probably could have won it in the first half?
Jacoby Jones.
Jacoby Jones. I mean, his first half was probably going to put him at least in the discussion, and then I think they gave it to whoever didn't deserve it.
He had, like, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, and one long one to Jones, who came down with it over the top of a guy. And then
although I do have to say that my theory of pick sixes winning Super Bowl MVP is not totally true, because Nick Collins had a pick six and Aaron Rodgers still won the MVP, but he had 3 touchdowns.
Yes, he had one of the highest rated games as far as passing goes in the Super Bowl. So he probably deserved it.
He did, and his receivers had lots of drops, I remember, because I was yelling.
Jordy had a couple, but he came right back to Jordy.
James Jones hit him right in the hands. It would have been a touchdown. He dropped it.
Yeah. Hey, wins a win.
Wins a win. So we're both picking Carolina. I'm picking it to be a blowout. Brett's picking a little bit closer game.
Picking it to be a weird score. That type of score where you can move a little bit, but you're not always going to get in the end zone on these defenses. So field goal. Lots and lots of field goals. Probably should have picked a kicker as one of my impact players.
That's true. So with that said, I mean, that kind of wraps up our Super Bowl preview. We both picked our winners. I don't they were both – it's been a lot – the only thing I hate is, it's 2 weeks leading into the game, and so just, last 2 weeks have just been talk. I'm ready for it.
Definitely, because nobody – I don't know what the ratings are for the Pro Bowl. I know a lot of people still watch it for whatever reason. But
it was a 5, whatever that means, which apparently I guess is decent, and it means that the NFL made money, so they're not going to stop it.
Well, I wish they would, but that's okay. Yeah, man, got anything else for this week?
I do not. But soon once the Super Bowl ends, we'll probably do a podcast wrapping it up, and it'll be time to turn the page, maybe look at some NBA stuff, and probably get started on the draft a little bit. So
absolutely, best time of the year.
Best time of the year.
Excellent, man. Well, thank you guys for watching and tuning in this week. We'll see you next time.